Hi, all. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to wait just a few seconds here to make sure that everyone's logged on, has their audio ready. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. All right. You are apparently all pros because you jumped right on instantaneously. So I am going to hand it over to Adam Wolf to get us started.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. It's great to see many of you joining the meeting at the moment. My name is Adam Wolf. I'm the Director of Planning and Building for the town of Corte Madera. I am joined by Dave Javid, who is founder and principal of Plan to Place, who has been helping us with our community engagement and helping us run these Zoom meetings. Also, Martha Battaglia, senior planner with the town of Corte Madera, who you'll be hearing from tonight. Paul Kronzer, Plan to Place, who's going to be helping us as well with some of the breakout rooms later in the meeting. We have a good team here on hand tonight. So Phil Boyle, senior planner as well, and Tracy Haggerty going to be helping us later this evening as well, all with the planning department, and Christina O'Rourke as well. So wanted just to welcome you this evening. We want to thank you for all of your time this evening, being with us, and for joining us for our third workshop in our Corte Madera Housing Element Workshop Series. Let's see. So for those who have been with us, we are, as I just mentioned, at our third workshop. The previous two workshops that we've held to this point, one in October and one in November, have really focused on what is the housing element, why are we doing this? The second workshop focused really on some key demographic information regarding Corte Madera, some existing conditions, and then had a discussion with a panel group of experts talking about housing needs and their perspectives. Tonight, we're really shifting the conversation, going to be talking about starting the conversation about really potential housing opportunity sites in Corte Madera. This is the kickoff for 3 consecutive meetings that we'll be having, really focused on this question of where are we going to be planning for new housing opportunities in Corte Madera over the next decade. Tonight is going to start with a high-level discussion, and then in January, we're actually going to come and start talking about our RENA requirements and actually figuring out how to get to a number that we think might, and the number of sites and relative densities of those sites that will help us achieve a compliant housing element. And then February, the intent is to come back again and really take feedback and comments and develop that into a proposal that we think would then be embedded within the housing element itself and form the basis of a sort of some zoning changes and policy changes that we're going to have to consider. So with that, I think I introduced everyone, and that gives you hopefully a good sense of what we're going to be doing this evening. I'm going to hand it back to Dave for a second, who can talk about tonight's agenda.
Great, thanks so much, Adam. So as Adam mentioned, we've been through a couple of workshops. This is a really important time in this housing element update process, and where we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into the housing opportunities discussion, giving you all an overview of some of the sites that are being considered as an opportunity, so that we can really kind of start to get your sense on your level of agreement with some of the sites, maybe consideration of others that should be looked at as we move through the process. Also, really importantly, we do have some property owners here with us tonight, and we're going to actually ask them to provide us some of their perspectives, which would be really important. And then most importantly, we want to actually dive into a discussion with you all through a small group discussion to get your feedback again on some of these sites, and to have a little bit deeper dive after we do some polling as we go through each one of the sites. And then we'll come back and do a report out and talk through next steps, and hopefully get you on your way shortly after that. We do anticipate a very full agenda. I just wanted to note, so we might go a little beyond 8 o'clock tonight, and I really appreciate your patience, but this is a very important meeting and we want to give it plenty of time for the discussion.
Thanks.
So,
sorry, Dave, I just wanted to mention again, we also do have a website. If you missed the first couple of workshops, we'll reiterate this at the end of the meeting, but if you missed the first couple of workshops, please go to www.Corte housing. Sorry about that.
That's right.
It's at the bottom of this little card here, cortemaderahousing.org, and you can get a lot of good information there, as well as Spanish translation if you so desire.
Great. And actually, Paul from the team just dropped that into the chat as well, and you'll see it actually popping up on most of these slides moving forward in case you missed it. But just real quick, how we're going to facilitate the discussion here tonight. As we move into the small groups, we're going to use the raise hand feature. If you haven't had a chance to play with that in the past, it's accessible through the reactions button at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. That'll pop up and you'll get to use the raise hand feature there. But again, we're going to use that when we get closer to, when we get into the small groups. But throughout the presentation, you do see the chat window available. You could feel free to drop in any questions or comments there, and we'll try our best to address those really as we get into the small groups. It gives us a chance to kind of get an understanding of what some of those questions might be. And then whatever doesn't get answered, we could lump into the summary of the workshop as well. So that'll be available that way also. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it back over to Adam to get us started. Oh, actually, before we do that.
Yeah, we want to do the test as our normal beginning of the workshop, so testing the chat.
That's right. That's right. So 2 things we're going to do now is, 1, we're going to do poll questions. But before we do that, we're going to do our quick test the chat to make sure, again, that you all have access to the chat and can use it freely. And we love to ask, what's 1 word that you would use to describe living or working in Corte Madera? And if you so desire, go ahead and drop that into the chat now. And we'll kind of circle back on that as well. It's always great to hear from you all. But as that's happening, let's go to the next slide, and actually wanted to bring up, oops, sorry, Adam, I wanted to do the demographics survey. We could do it right here on this slide.
Okay.
So every meeting we get into, we do a quick demographic poll just to make sure we can, just to get a sense of who we are talking to or who's engaging at these workshops. And then as we go through the entire process, we ask the same demographic questions every time, again, to make sure that we're reaching all perspectives and all different demographic groups. So this gives us a chance to course correct if needed as we go through the process. So you'll see in front of you now, there's a series of questions about where you live, where you work, which of the following describes why you're here with us this evening, your housing situation, and what type of housing you live in, if you're lucky enough to do so. And then standard demographic questions related to age, ethnicity, and income. So if you would oblige us and take a couple minutes here to take that survey, that would be a huge help for us, again, as we kind of navigate through these series of workshops and different community events. And I'm going to give you all just a couple more minutes here. I know there's a good handful of questions, so I don't want to rush you. And if for any reason you didn't get a chance to access these, we can kind of bring them back around just to make sure you can. So I see about a third of you have answered it so far, so we'll wait another couple minutes here. I also see great information coming in through the chat, which is awesome. Beautiful, tranquil, hometown fun, scenic space, beautiful, awesome, open space, really great to see. why you all, as we do, love the town of Corte Madera. Okay, I think we've gotten pretty close to a critical mass here. I'll wait maybe 10 more seconds. We have definitely more than a half. I see a question, not sure how to access the poll. It should have actually popped up right on your screen right as I launched it. So I'm hoping it's somewhere on your screen. You could access it that way and be able to take the poll. So with that, I think we have a really good understanding here with the number of folks that have taken it. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And again, no problem if you didn't get a chance to take it. We can make sure that we circle back to those that didn't get your information on the poll as well. But I'm going to end the poll and go ahead and share the results so you all can take a quick look along with me. As is suspected, a vast majority live here in Corte Madera. A good number of you actually also work in Corte Madera, about a third of you. A good spattering outside as well as expected. A good range of results as to why you are here this evening. Everything from concern about housing development to want to learn more about housing in Corte Madera. Wow, 100% of you are homeowners, and vast majority in a house or duplex. Good range of ages. Okay, great. This was really great to see. So thank you all for taking the time to take that poll. I'll go ahead and stop sharing now and turn it back over to Adam.
Okay, thanks. And without further ado, we're going to turn this over to Martha Battaglia, Senior Planner, to talk about some recent housing production in Corte Madera and give you some context there, which I think is important before we start talking about the future, and talk about a little bit about the last decade in housing production. So go ahead, Martha.
Next slide. Okay, so before we begin to discuss housing opportunity sites in the upcoming housing element, we're going to take a look back towards some of the projects that have been built or under construction currently. So many of the town's housing policies have supported recent housing development in Corte Madera. Next slide. The town's current housing element was adopted in May 2015, and the housing element is one chapter in the general plan, and it outlines the town's housing policies and goals for an 8-year planning period. And the current housing element is for a planning period of 2015 through 2023. Next slide. Actually, I think back one. The housing element includes a variety of policies and programs, as is shown on this slide. And these policies and programs are designed to help the town meet its housing goals, including the development of new housing. This slide highlights several of the policies in the current housing element and includes policies and programs related to such things as promoting accessory dwelling units, supporting programs for the care of homeless, and supporting mixed-use projects, which include residential and commercial components. Next slide. There have been 4 housing projects in the current housing cycle that have contributed to our regional housing needs allocation, which is also known as SERENA. These projects have resulted in new residential units in all income categories, which include very low, low, moderate, and market rate. There have also been 4 new single-family residences constructed in this planning period, which have resulted in some additional market rate units. Next slide. Tam Ridge is a project that probably needs little introduction. This project is on Tamla Vista Boulevard. It is 180 for rent apartment unit building, which includes 18 affordable units. This project is a mixed-use project. It includes commercial ground floor retail with the residential units above. And the project included several improvements, such as new sidewalks along the frontage, an outdoor seating area, undergrounding utilities, and a traffic improvement payment. And this project was completed in 2017. Next slide. The Enclave Project is located at Casa Buena Drive, and this includes 16 for-sale townhomes. And 3 of the townhomes are affordable units. This project included a state density bonus and this resulted in additional units being constructed beyond what was allowed by the town's policies. The project also included some exceptions to some development standards. This included an increase to the height and a reduction in the rear setback. The project included several improvements such as new sidewalks and also a small play area. And this project was completed recently in 2019. Next slide. The residences at the preserve, which is also commonly referred to as the Robin Drive project, was recently approved by the town council in February 2019. This is approximately a 15.5-acre site, and it is the last greenfield development in Corte Madera. The project includes 16 houses, which will be for rent, and 8 attached accessory dwelling units, which will also be for rent. And the project includes a variety of improvements, such as sidewalks and also payment of a street improvement fee. And this project is currently under construction. Next slide. The project home key, which is also known as the Casa Buena, is the former America's Best Value Inn located on Casa Buena Drive. This property was purchased by Marin County in 2020 with grant funding from the state. Marin County applied for grant funds and used these funds to purchase several hotels in the county, including this hotel. The Casa Buena provides 18 units of affordable housing. And modifications are currently being made to the rooms to add a kitchenette. And in addition, there will be new landscaping and fencing. Next slide. This picture shows several pictures of the Casa Buena, 2 of the exterior and then 1 of the interior. Next slide. There have been recent housing bills that have promoted construction of accessory dwelling units. And as shown on this slide, there has been an increase in accessory dwelling units constructed in Corte Madera in recent years. This year, there have been 18 building permits issued to date for ADUs. Next slide. The town partnered with other Marin County cities on a project known as ADU Marin. And the goal of this project is to help homeowners build ADUs. The webpage includes a variety of resources such as floor plans, stories from homeowners, calculator, and has a lot of great resources to check out. The next slide. This shows pictures of several accessory dwelling units that have been constructed in Corte Madera. The top 2 pictures are new construction, and then the lower pictures were converted from existing spaces. Next slide. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Adam, who's going to be going over the planning framework for housing opportunity sites in Corte Madera.
Thanks, Martha. I think it's important just to look back at the housing production that the town has facilitated. And really, I think it's important to note that we've really done a pretty well when compared to other jurisdictions in terms of housing production over the last decade or so. But of course, we now want to turn to where we might look to plan for additional housing development over the next decade. And certainly, as we discussed at the last couple of workshops, the housing need is much more significant in the Bay Area and Marin since the last housing element than it has been in the past. And of course, the scale of what we are now required to plan for has also grown exponentially. So in order to start to talk about where opportunities to plan for new housing exist in Corte Madera, and so you know where this presentation is going, what I want to do is we're going to break this discussion about opportunities for new housing development in Corte Madera into 4 sections. First, we want to share with you where we, sort of as planning staff, think the best opportunities to plan for new housing exist and why. Secondly, we want to hear from Corte Madera property owners and understand their perspectives regarding the properties they own and potential opportunities that they envision. Third, we want to turn it over to you to weigh in on the potential housing sites that we have identified. And then fourth, we really want to continue the discussion in breakout groups to hear your thoughts about the sites that we have may have missed, or comments or questions about the sites we have focused on in our presentation, or even this planning framework that we are discussing here in a second. And really, we're starting this again, going back to this is the first of 3 discussions about actually needing to accomplish the meat of this housing element, which is identifying sites to accommodate the number ultimately housing compliant with our RHNA needs or RHNA numbers at the end of the day. So this is going to start at a high level, and then we'll move into more detail at their next workshop and talk specifically about RHNA. But for today's purposes, we're not going to really get into that specific numbers. In any case, so for your planning department, and just for speaking on behalf of the planning department, as we went into this exercise and we thought about the best locations for considering new housing opportunities, really on a scale that is now being required of the town over the next decade, we started, as we usually do, with the town's general plan, which was most recently adopted in 2009. But we've also listened to private property owners over the last many years who have told us that they are considering property redevelopment. We've listened to housing developers who have told us where they see the best housing development opportunities. And really, we've also relied on our experience as planners in Corte Madera for the last 7+ years to survey the town and look for sites that we believe meet our understanding of community concerns and values. So with that, through that process and that evaluation process, we've attempted to come up with a framework or guiding planning criteria or principles for identifying potential housing opportunities sites within the town. Starting with a couple that seem pretty obvious, but nonetheless, I think it's important to get out there that, can we find sites that really limit vehicular traffic through local residential streets? Are there sites that are located along commercial corridors, near freeways, and in proximity to the best public transit, at least we have in Corte Madera? Are there sites that minimize physical impacts to existing residences? So are there sites located outside of established residential neighborhoods where things like, we often find things like views and privacy, lighting, those concerns crop up? Are there sites that really could use refreshing and where the appearance of the properties and the productivity potentially of the properties and quality of existing properties could be enhanced? So look for properties developed with older commercial buildings with little recent investment or that happen to be vacant, and we have several of those in town. And certainly we're also looking at modernizing commercial centers to take advantage of new retail trends and the fact that there is a lot of available land oftentimes in those areas. We don't, as Martha mentioned, there aren't any vacant parcels anymore in Corte Madera in which to build. And so this is an opportunity really to look to advance economic development goals while developing housing. And then lastly, but certainly not least, let's try to be consistent with our existing land use policy and our general plan to the extent possible. And really that has us looking to areas where housing is already allowed. And so I'm going to start there really as I sort of go and elaborate on this framework a little bit, and we'll start to talk about actually do a survey of some of these areas that I think we feel are best suited for starting the conversation about housing opportunity sites. And really starting with the town's existing general plan, which lays out, I think, a pretty good blueprint for new housing opportunities in line with the framework we just outlined. Importantly, the town's general plan that was adopted in 2009, it recognized there was an opportunity to introduce housing into areas of town that previously were seen as off limits or were really just left to be commercial only. And it changed the land use policy of the town to allow for a mix of commercial and residential uses near Highway 101 and major commercial corridors. And in some cases, areas that were already starting to transform into mixed use areas. So this is really described in the town's land use diagram, the general plan land use diagram. And this is a map I often come back to because it's really important to see and graphically see how the land and the uses in Corte Madera are sort of defined in different areas of our community. And essentially what you can see and what I just described as these new mixed use areas that were adopted in 2009 are turquoise on the map. These are, with the exception of the village, which was also designated mixed use. That was sort of the turquoise areas you can see up at the top along Highway 101, sort of hugging Highway 101, up and down north and south, and then the village as well, which was also designated mixed use and shown in color here on the map. And it's more of a reddish brownish color. I think it will show up to you. And so these are areas, again, along Highway 101 corridor, near public transit, away from established residential neighborhoods and local residential streets. Those areas on the map are shown in orange. These are single family neighborhoods, orange. Yellow are also single family neighborhoods. And then the multifamily neighborhoods are generally in this purple color here, and then sort of dotted around areas. But you can see the turquoise is sort of, those sites are away from those areas near Highway 101. So the land use policy is really already there in the 2009 general plan. But I thought, to get a better sense of what's actually located in these mixed use designated areas and how they provide potential housing opportunity sites consistent with that planning framework I outlined. I think it's important to go through each of these areas a little bit more closely, sort of a bird's eye survey, thanks to Google, of these areas of town. And that's really the focus of the next part of the presentation. I'm going to try to, we have a lot to get to, I'm going to try to go through them relatively quickly. But we can always come back to this at a future, well, in our breakout rooms or what have you. But I want to start to talk about some of these areas in a little bit more detail, so you have a sense of what some of these sites look like. So starting really at the northern tip of the town of Corte Madera, really up against Highway 101, as sometimes referred to as Mellon Pfeiffer area. This area, which does currently allow residential uses, is currently all occupied with commercial uses. And there's been some redevelopment fairly recently with an office building up in the corner in this triangle here. And more recently, 200 Mellon replaced the old used car dealership at this location, but there still are several commercial buildings that were built roughly 50 years ago, that's the Big Five building, corner office building, there's Joann's Fabric, etc. There's the Barcelino office site in the back up here, which was previously a conversation or a discussion proposed for redevelopment in front of the Planning Commission back in 2019. So we know this is right for redevelopment as well. And we'll hear from Sebastian Jakovics in a few minutes, his family owns several of these properties here, and he can give you his perspective on potentially some visions for the future there. And one thing that's interesting about this area, I will say, because it's the furthest to the north in town, it does have what's somewhat unique in Corte Madera. It does have a pedestrian connection over the highway, a pedestrian and bike connection over the highway that is can readily access the north-south greenway and over to Corte Madera Creek and over to Larkspur Landing. Next, we're going to talk about the Tamil Vista Boulevard area, which with the exception of stick to this, with the exception of the office complex located up in the north in the top of this image here, was the subject of a 2016 study and ultimately a rezoning of the Tam Vista Boulevard area to allow for, in the zoning at least, residential uses. There's obviously the vacant theater site in this in this area, as many of you are aware, where there's been prior redevelopment proposals here, but it's been vacant for a good 4 to 5 years now. So this is an obvious place to look for potential opportunities for new housing development. And I think it's also interesting to note that this is across from Tam Ridge, while we have some more traditional office uses fronting along Tam Vista Boulevard. In the back, there are actually a couple of sites that are more warehouse style in nature. There are some retail uses back there, but they do offer a pretty, when you actually get back there, a pretty dramatic views to the west and are well connected to the Corte Madera trail system. Again, these are areas that are close to commercial corridors. In this case, they are across the street, and there's residential uses across the street, but obviously very easy access, or relatively easy access, to Highway 101. The Tamalpais area, also this turquoise color, there's several properties there. As you can see in this image, looking west, these are areas that are currently with the general plan designation do allow residential uses, but these are exclusively commercial areas at the moment. The old mortuary, some of you may know, it's been vacant for the last several years. And a new 3-unit apartment building is actually would be the first residential apartment residential use introduced into this area as proposed, and what should be heard by the Planning Commission shortly. Certainly, Park Madera Center, which is owned by the town, would qualify, I think, as one of the shopping centers that could use some modernizing. It is an older shopping center, of course, but at the moment there are certain complicating factors, mostly around the financing of that site, which certainly make it less than ideal to consider at the moment for immediate development of housing, and we can get into that later if we need to. Just moving along again, trying to give you a better sense of some of these areas. This is more of the Casa Buena area along Highway 101 again. This is another mixed-use area between Casa Buena and Meadow Street. The most significant sites you can see here are automobile dealerships. And what's interesting is that these automobile dealerships have recently been, Tesla just moved into this automobile dealership and invested heavily in redeveloping that building. And we also have an approved redevelopment plan for the Marin Luxury Cars location as well. So those are what would otherwise seem as potentially good sites for housing development in the near future, may not be available because of the current existing investments that have happened in the recent past at those locations. Otherwise, though, there are some redevelopment. The Casa Buena, which Martha mentioned, is a new residential use being introduced at the location over here. The Budget Inn has been torn down. They're going to be developing a new 22-room hotel at that location. So some activity, but these are other smaller sites that really don't lend themselves to easy or significant amounts of potential new housing. Moving quickly, the village, I want to stop on the village for a second here. Just to provide some more context here, the village is actually made up of 3 parcels. And we'll move to this image, which you can see. One belongs to Nordstrom's, which is at the top of this image over here, which completed a major renovation in 2013. The center part of the village belongs to Macerich, it's owned by Macerich. Obviously this doesn't show, but RH Gallery was recently developed in this area of the parking lot. And the other parcel belongs to and is owned by Macy's, which is a separate parcel of approximately 7.5 acres nearest Tamalpais Drive over here. We certainly, as staff, have been watching closely how other retail shopping centers have been reimagining and really transforming themselves as anchor tenants no longer need really this physical presence that they have in the past, and retail's sort of changing. Obviously, what's happening up at Northgate is part of that transformation at historic shopping centers that are entirely commercial. And you know, to be perfectly blunt about it, we really see Macy's site as a tremendous opportunity, really aligned with the planning framework. It's close to Highway 101. It's away from established residential neighborhoods and residential streets. And it really lends itself to potentially as an opportunity for significant new housing development that could not only serve the purposes for our housing goals and what we're trying to do through the housing element process, but really support the village as a whole through its transformation in the coming decades. The town's general plan already allows for about 300 units at the village. And you know, we've heard from several developers, Macy's itself, who are interested in really thinking about reimagining what this site and shopping center could become in the future. And we'll hear from John Steckley of Macerich in a few minutes to talk more about the village itself. And then finally, sorry, we're getting there, but I think it's important just to see what's in these locations so we can actually evaluate and have you help us evaluate these areas for potential housing. So we're now looking south of the village in this commercial, mostly commercial. It's actually a very much a mixed use, and there are a variety of uses in this area. It's between Paradise Drive and San Clemente Drive on Boulevard. And it's truly, you know, you have some semi-industrial or quasi-industrial and character uses sort of towards the southern end of this part of Corte Madera. Herc Rentals lot and adjacent warehouses in this area. There's fully occupied and renovated, again, automobile dealerships in the northern part. And in between, you have several variety of different uses with a pet hospital, a boarding animal boarding site. You have our developed affordable housing complex, San Clemente Place, along with a warehouse, storage facility. You have some utility functions. So it's a really hodgepodge of different uses, but certainly qualifies as being away from established residential neighborhoods, access to transportation, and so on. And we'll hear from Craig McLean about a property he owns in this area as well in a few minutes here. Hopefully just 1 minute. The last area I wanted to highlight as part of this tour of Corte Madera and these mixed use areas is sort of the Paradise Shopping Center. This is an area that previously was developed in about 2001 with a residential ageist memory care and ageist living center at the eastern portion of the site. It's split into multiple different lots here, but one of the sites that is really of interest to staff and as we look and do this survey is sort of the western portion of the site, which includes the 5 Point Fitness. The town does own a couple of parcels of this parking lot behind it. There's a liquor store that's sort of been in and out of trying to renovate over time, etc. And perhaps there's some opportunities there as well. And so again, just all of these areas, I think, really do fit into this framework that we are the lens through which we're trying to consider and think about where are the best places to look for housing opportunity sites in Corte Madera. We really wanted to, at this time, turn it over to some of the people who actually control property so that they can directly provide their perspectives on the potential opportunities that may exist. And so with that, we're going to shift, and I feel really fortunate to have a couple of our local residents and local property owners who we've developed relationships with over many years here with the town, and some may be well known, some may not, but I'm very thankful and happy that they are here joining us tonight to really just talk directly about the properties they own and their thoughts on the future. So with that, Sebastian, maybe and Craig and John, if you can turn your cameras on, we can actually get into this part of the chat here. And I don't know who wants to go first, but I'm going to leave this slide up. I'm going to stop the share and maybe we can all see at the same time. Does that make sense? Sebastian, do you want to, and if you want me to go on to a certain slide, maybe I'll start with you and then we can go to Craig and then John.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, Adam. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Good. I just want to introduce myself first. My name is Sebastian Jakovics. My family and I own a bunch of properties, as Adam has pointed out, in the Pfeiffer Lucky Drive area. We've developed a number of those properties. On the very north side, 101 Nellen, which was formerly the Sizzler. Back over 20 some odd years ago, I built an office building there that had been Elaine Pinnell's northern corporate headquarters for some time. We are currently in escrow to sell that building to another local Marin user that's going to make it their headquarters. And we recently built 200 Nellen, which is our family corporate headquarters, and are leasing some retail space that is under lease right now and in front of town council and planning for some uses there. The properties that Adam had mentioned that might be of interest for future housing development is the contiguous set of properties that abut the highway at 101, starting with the Big 5 building, the former hospice office building, which now has a number of different tenants, including nonprofits and others. The former Ratings ice skating rink, which has been Gold's Gym, and then Fitness SF. We own and operate the fitness business. We have locations throughout the Bay Area, including this one. And then there's an adjacent office building there. The four contiguous properties have approximately about 140 to 150,000 square feet of land, which is approaching 4 acres. Those properties, in our view, could be redeveloped. We've had them for some time. Our primary business there is the fitness business. And some of the things that we look at as far as vis-a-vis the housing element, or things that we're taking a look at as a family, is those buildings are older buildings. Some of them were built in the 60s. I don't know the exact vintage of every building that's there, but I do know that the Fitness SF as well as Big 5 were built in the mid 60s, early 60s, and then the subsequent office buildings. So one of the concerning issues for us there is they're obviously lower lying as far as a floodplain. Those properties would have to be raised at some point, and that would be the appropriate time to redevelop those properties. Additionally, that's all bay mud, as many of you know. We build all our new buildings on piles, including the former Elaine Pinnell building, where that bay mud is about 105 feet deep. And then at 200 Nellen towards the Marin Municipal District, it was actually hard rock. So it kind of slopes down bay mud as we approach the bay. So those are expensive improvements to do. The entitlement process is complicated with multiple agencies. To give the viewers an example, we spent close to $1 million just in the ground at 200 Nellen, just on storm drainage and site prep and all that sort of stuff. These, people talk about affordable housing and everybody wants it. Everybody wants to make it more welcoming for people, but the reality is that costs are extremely high. And therefore, from our standpoint, there would have to be, right now, the FAR, which is the floor area ratio, the allowed coverage of those lots are about 0.34. So That would have to significantly change in order for us to be motivated or to even financially put together some sort of redevelopment. In my personal view, I do think mixed use is appropriate there. We'd like to preserve a fitness function. Fitness has been there since 1989. We serve Corte Madera and the surrounding areas, and it's a very popular gym. And both with the high school and maybe some of you are members from the community have been there and have seen it. So we would like to see some retail elements in there. We'd be open to for rent housing. And we're here to be part of the process, be part of the solution. We're realistic. We're actually experienced builders and business operators. And so we know the ins and outs over the long haul. And we've got relationships with Corte Madera going back decades. And yeah, that's basically, Adam, I don't know if I covered the basics.
That's great. No, that's great. I really appreciate you coming and just giving I think it's important for our community to really hear directly from you and your perspective on what, what the future holds, and at least in an idea. And we're in very early stage, so it's entirely appropriate.
Right. And like Big Five sporting goods, right? There's very few sporting goods places left. If you really take a look around, Big Five does provide a great service for people who need, baseball mitts and fishing poles when they're fishing with grandpa, things like that. So we'd like to see some accommodation for all that, and we're here to be part of the process to see what really unfolds.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. I was thinking maybe Craig, are you on the line here? Can you?
Yep. Hello. Can you hear me?
There you are. Hey,
all right.
Good to see you.
Good evening. How are you all doing? I own the property at 5804 Paradise Drive, which is directly across from the new Amy's, that the new restaurant they built there on Paradise Drive. And a little bit about myself. I grew up in Corte Madera and was born on Harbor Drive and was a Granada Gopher. And my father had developed a number of properties on Paradise Drive, and we had a family business, a motorcycle shop that I worked at. And since we have sold that since, but my office is still on Paradise Drive. And part of the reason I'm interested in the housing and how and where it's going to be developed is when they originally wanted to turn the lumberyard on San Clemente into the EAH project, I was very much against it. We had a motorcycle shop, and we also owned the property where the Camp Canine is, which is the 5804 Paradise Drive property. And we're very much concerned how housing would impact our commercial business and our tenants' commercial businesses. And after the project was built and completed and occupied, I've realized that really there hasn't been any impact. The property we haven't had any traffic issues. We haven't, and again, I go to the same place every day on Paradise Drive, so I drive past that development every day, a couple times a day, and so all my concerns were actually, I was wrong. It wasn't a big impact, and it's turned out to be, it's certainly a lot nicer looking than what was there before, which was just a big empty lot and a vacant lot. And so as when the pandemic hit there at the beginning of last year, we've had some tenants have had some issues, and so at the beginning of this year, I reached out to Phil Boyle and asked him about possibly our site being considered to be developed into housing. And so then we had a meeting with Martha and Adam, and I wanted to give you guys my idea as far as how I see it and why I see it there. And due to the fact that it backs to the existing EAH project and the other commercial buildings that are surrounding it typically don't have windows that are facing it. And so I just thought, hey, this would maybe be a good place for housing, and wanted to kind of throw our hat in the ring as far as potentially developing it into housing. The existing building that's on the site that's occupied by the Camp Canine is probably one of the original buildings that was built when they reclaimed that land. So I've seen some old pictures where there's the highway and the highway patrol station, which was now I guess is where Macy's is. There was the highway patrol station, and then this old Quonset hut sitting in the mud flats, and so it's still there, and I think it's probably due to be redeveloped, and so that's what we're considering doing and moving forward.
Thanks, Craig. Really appreciate you joining us tonight and sharing that perspective.
Yeah.
John, are you around here? I'm sorry, I'm trying to look over my screen, but I don't.
I am. You have to cycle through 49 participants here on this call, so I was lost in the mix.
Thanks. You want to chat a little bit about the village? Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. For those who don't know me, my name is John Steckley. I'm the development lead for Ridge in the village. For those who don't know our company, Ridge, we own, operate, and develop regional shopping centers across the United States. So hopefully I provide a little bit of a different perspective for this kind of this conversation. I'm not going to really get into the village in particular, but I kind of wanted to impart my, what I've been seeing from, all of our properties across the country on how housing can just be a great add to retail projects. So kind of piggybacking on Adam's comments earlier, as everyone knows, brick and mortar retail is in a time of transition. We all have Amazon Prime accounts, or at least probably most of us do. And those trips to retail brick and mortar are probably becoming fewer and far between. But what we're seeing is that those visits to our retail projects, especially high quality, best in class retail projects like the Village, are becoming more substantial and more quality type visits. And our business model as shopping center owners and developers is changing. We're having to react to a quickly changing customer. I'm sure on this call in fact I know because I looked at the poll, there are people on this call across many different generations, or the profile, the demographic in Marin is of course changing. And so as operators, we need to be able to react to that. And we're starting to look at our retail assets, and in particular the Village, as through the eyes of what I think malls were originally kind of envisioned as, and that's local town centers. I think gone are the days of just creating inline retail and expecting that we can continue to backfill spaces and leases when they come due in perpetuity. That's just not the model that's sustainable. It's not the model that our customer likes. So in turn, we're looking at other uses. We're looking at adding office. We're looking at adding hotels to our properties, more food and beverage, more experiential retail, and residential is definitely a key add. In particular, our assets in California, some of the properties that I mainly work with, we're hearing the kind of the drumbeat from Sacramento regarding the need to provide housing. We're hearing it from our customers. So especially in California, we're looking at adding housing to our projects. And we're really viewing the addition of housing through the lens of mixed use. It's really part of a long-term mixed use strategy for our projects. We've done some studies on the Village. We think that there's a potential here in long-term for residential. Obviously Adam outlined kind of the different ownership groups at the Village, but we feel as the operator that we have a really strong position to be able to advocate for housing here. And for those who are a little bit worried about adding housing to retail projects, there's a couple of benefits that we always like to highlight. One is, it creates a stronger sense of community, a friendlier, more diverse environment, especially in counties like Marin, where it's very hard to find housing, especially kind of for rent housing. We think that, that addition to our shopping centers is a plus, not only for us, but for the surrounding community. Housing also creates a more vibrant 18-hour, 7-day-a-week activation. It creates a safer shopping center. We like that. And then we also think that it's just more sustainable development, encourages more community-focused uses such as food and beverage and entertainment. So we think net, the add of housing and for rent housing or condos or, depending on what's needed in the market and what's kind of required, we think it's a great add to our shopping centers. So, we're happy to be here on this, in this forum, collaborating with the town and the community, because it's again, like I said, it's a little bit different model. I think it's more of a collaborative approach. It's more embracing the community versus, just creating kind of these cold, retail shells that we fill and people come and use and then they leave. So we're happy to be included in this, and we're of course really looking forward to seeing what the future has to hold for the village.
Thanks a lot, John. I think the next step, I know we're running a little, well, many minutes behind at this point, but I think those were really good perspectives for everyone to hear, and just to have that sort of perspective from people rather than staff sort of trying to explain this. I mean, you're the folks who actually own property and control it, and obviously are looking toward the future with what to do with those assets. So in any case, I want to move now. What the next part of the actual discussion here is we wanted to show and actually have our community and those on the call today, and those, if you can't do it today, you can do it afterwards. But we're going to actually want to get some feedback on some of the potential housing opportunity sites that we've identified that are in these areas, some of which we've already talked about. But we'd like to get a sense from those on this meeting and this workshop tonight, what you think, and if you think these are suitable locations for housing development or not. And then we're going to break out into groups, and we'll get to elaborate even more. Rather than just do polling, you're able to explain, and we'll be able to respond to certain specific questions that you may have. So if we can, I'd like to move forward through the rest of this, and then we can address any questions in the chat toward the end of the presentation. Thanks. So what we've done is we've designed sort of a key locator map. I want you all to look. We're going to talk first. This is site number 1. We're going to have a quick poll here. So
Adam, sorry, we need to start sharing screen again real quick.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate that.
That might help for folks to follow along.
Yes. Let's share screen. I'm looking at my screen, but I'm not showing it. Okay. So here we are. So what we've done is we're going to get some quick feedback on polls about certain sites. Many of which I touched on when we did the fly through or flyover on Google Maps. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Dave at this point. I'm going to slide it over here. The way this is formatted is we have sort of an aerial view of the site on this side. And then we actually have a couple of images and photographs on this side of the slide. That will help identify what we're talking about. And then Dave, are you gonna launch a poll?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah. So as Adam mentioned, we're going to show a series of images and site locations, and then after each one, we're going to do a real quick poll just to get a sense from you all if you agree that these sites might be suitable or not. And then this will help us actually spur the conversation, as Adam mentioned, when we get into the small groups and dive into the why and get a better sense from you all about each one of these sites. I'm going to launch the first poll.
And so this is, and you can, while the poll's going, but it's It's currently a vacant, the old mortuary there, 2 parcels built in 1963, closed several years ago. There's no existing tenant there. Anyways, and that's sort of the context. And by the way, I think I did see a question from Peter Hensel about every site you will see in this presentation is in the floodplain. So you will, that is something we have to contend with. We recognize that. We did base essentially an appeal to ABAG on that contention that that's problematic, but nonetheless, these are, I think, what staff feels are the most obvious opportunities to start to consider. And again, this is the starting point, starting to consider where we should start to plan for housing opportunities over the next decade.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. So I see a good 3/4 of you have taken the poll. I'm going to end it here shortly. And again, if you didn't get a chance to give us your sense, this is going to be the main core of the conversation as we get into the small groups. So no problem at all. This is just meant to give us a quick snapshot of sentiment in the room here. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll for this first one. I'll share out the results real quick so you all could see it. It looks like just over a half of you, almost 60% of you felt that this site is suitable, and about 3/4 of you thought it was either suitable or somewhat suitable. So good to see. Paul, we'll grab a snapshot of this now, and then we'll move on to the next site.
Tell me when to go, Dave.
You can go ahead now. I think we're set.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the second site, this is the vacant theater site, as I tend to call it. I think almost everyone should be fairly familiar with it, but this is a large site, over 2 acres. Obviously along Tam Ridge Boulevard, owned currently by Scandinavian Designs.
Great, and the poll is out now. You all are quickly becoming expert poll takers.
Right.
I see the polls.
Obviously, mostly a parking lot. Yeah.
Excellent. Looks like we almost got all you there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Share this back out. As you can see, a vast majority of you all thought this site is definitely suitable. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And again, all these results will move with us to the small group exercise. So we'll be able to dive into them deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. We can go to the next site.
This is, I mentioned in the flyover towards the back of the office complex. So this is actually now looking south. You can see the Sandra Marker Trail over in this location. So it's these 2 properties towards the back of Tam Ridge Boulevard. There are active uses there, but you can see in the images sort of the character of those buildings. This is facing west. Actually, this is the west facade of the 400 Tam Ridge Plaza, and this is the east facade of 500 Tam Ridge Plaza. So again, these combined are pretty large, provide a large 3-acre parcel, about 1.5 acres each.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll now. I think we've got the vast majority of you weighed in. Let's share that back out again. And again, another site that about 3/4 of you either think is suitable or somewhat suitable. There are some that thought it might not be suitable, and we'd love to dive into the why when we get into the small groups. So I'll stop sharing and hand it back over to you, Adam.
Next one, we're going to move up to, this is actually, Sebastian spoke of, these are his family's properties. Those 3, again, this is sort of looking now south, but it's composed of Big 5, the former hospice at the corner, and then the SF Fitness site. Together, it's about 2 1/3 acres. And I think Sebastian gave you plenty of context for the sites, and obviously this backs up to an environmentally sensitive area. But obviously also has direct access to the highway. And so forth.
Great, thank you, Adam. We'll wait just maybe a couple more seconds here, give
Yeah.
folks a chance to weigh in. All right. Gonna end the poll now. And again, no problem if you didn't have a chance to weigh in, you'll definitely get a chance to share your input when we get to the small groups. Yet again, looks like a vast majority of you thought this site is also either suitable or somewhat suitable. And we'll dive in again to the why when we move into the small groups. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. On to the next.
This is 111 Lucky, so we're in the same area on the other side of sometimes referred to as Black Kettle Lagoon. This was formerly proposed, as I mentioned earlier, to be redeveloped with a potentially a memory care facility. It's the whole site actually encompasses the lagoon in this sensitive area as well, but the actual developed portion, the paved portion, is about an acre, and certainly that's the only portion of the site we would think would be utilized for redevelopment, as was the case when the memory care facility was discussed a couple years ago.
Excellent, thank you, Adam. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now for this one. Share that back out. Looks like the staff is doing well so far. The ones that we proposed, there's another vast majority of you again thought it's either suitable or somewhat suitable, with a select few considering maybe not suitable. So we'll get into that why there. So I'll stop sharing and on to the next.
Okay, we're at the village. Don't need to say anything more about that. I think we can just go ahead and, this is specifically focused on the Macy's parcel, which is almost 7.5 acres. Which I think, at least from staff's perspective, has the greatest likelihood of actually being a potential opportunity for more of a large scale redevelopment.
Great. Thank you, Adam. I'm going to wait one more second here. Okay, great. Looks like we got vast majority of you. Again, as you could see on the screen, almost 3/4 or more consider this one suitable, but there are a select few that would like to maybe let us know as we get into the small groups also what might not be suitable on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and back to you, Adam.
Moving down, this is the site that Craig McLean was describing. So I don't think that needs further introduction. It's about a little over 1 acre.
Great, thanks, Adam. I'm going to wait just another 10 seconds here or so. Thank you all for your patience and giving us your input here so quickly. We only have a couple sites left here. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now, share out the results. Another one that got some pretty good feedback as being suitable, but a couple folks thought we should maybe take a look at this as not being suitable as well. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. We'll get to the next site.
This is in the same general area, but down towards the southern area of this same general area, the Herc Reynolds site. About 1 3/4 acres. Again, sort of in a mostly currently utilized for storage and rental equipment.
Excellent, thanks, Adam. Maybe just a few more seconds here. All right, looks like we got most of you. Excellent, share this one back out. Again, majority saw that it's suitable, but there are a few that either didn't have a comment or thought it might be unsuitable. So we'll take a look at that as well. And I think we have one final site to share.
Yeah, and this is the site at the 5 Point Fitness. It actually extends back pretty far with the parking lot behind it. There's a couple of town-owned parcels are over in this location. Certainly, I think from my perspective, if there's a way to combine this parcel with that, it would be better. But we'll just, again, this is sort of a starting cut point, just for getting some feedback on whether we should start to consider these more seriously. But you know, 1.5 acres, again, a fairly good size site. And it goes with that sort of modernizing the retail centers concept with activating the new uses and supporting already has the nugget market there.
Great, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll on this one. So most of you were able to get in as well. Share the results back out. And again, looks like most of you thought this was suitable, but there are few that would like us to maybe reconsider as it being not suitable, which we'll get to dive into shortly here in the small group discussion. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing now.
Yeah, and we'll move real quickly. I just wanted to say, you know, these were the ones that we focused on, these sites for at least tonight's exercise and this workshop. We are aware of, we did sort of in our survey, look at some other potential sites as well, but for one reason or another, they didn't really fit exactly into that planning framework. I think it's still early for us to be saying how many sites we actually need to look for ultimately in order to obtain a compliant housing element. That's really going to be the conversation in January. So we think we're focused really on the larger sites now that maybe have more capacity, but there are some other sites we looked at and we just want to put those out there. And maybe this is a good time to, there was a comment about why not, I think, Tamalpais Drive, which is the Park Madera Center. And certainly, you know, this is the town-owned property. And I think certainly there's a recognition that potentially could be a good housing development site in the future. It's just at the moment, there's still considerations needed to be discussed. Particularly, as I mentioned, related to the finance obligations that are currently on that property. And so really the immediate next step is a discussion with the finance subcommittee of the town to really discuss what are the available options, what are sort of the ramifications of and the impact of the existing financial arrangements on that property, which may preclude sort of immediate redevelopment of that property. And there's also other interests. It's a larger conversation that I think we need to have as a community. And so we thought we didn't want to focus on that for tonight. And certainly in the future, you know, we may bring that back into the conversation if need be. So that's, hopefully that answers your question, Peter, to a certain extent. And then there's some other properties, just, you know, I think the 3-lot subdivision that came up last time, we didn't focus on that. Some of these are more in residential neighborhoods, and so we didn't focus on those. But anyways, one thing we really want to hear from you is, are we missing sites? Should we be focused elsewhere? Where else can we be looking for alternative housing sites that we didn't mention, and that we might sort of investigate further? And so really that's the next phase. One of the questions we'll be asking there is, are there sites that we missed? we'd love to hear elaborations on how you rated the sites that we did put in front of you for consideration. And we'll be taking notes and in these breakout rooms. And I'll hand it over to Dave to help us facilitate that, because I don't know how to do that part.
Great, Adam. Thank you. So yeah, I see a couple comments coming in that folks are ready and willing to share, and this is the time we're going to go ahead and transition now to the small groups. And just as a reminder, when we get into the small groups, the facilitators are going to mute all mics just so we don't accidentally speak over each other, but we really want to have a nice, hopefully informal discussion with you all. But the easiest way will be to use the hand raise feature. Again, go into that reactions button on your toolbar. It'll bring up a little hand next to your name, and then the facilitator will unmute you or ask you to unmute, and then you can contribute that way. The chat will also be available to give us feedback that way. And then you're going to see a virtual whiteboard that's going to come up with the map of the entire area and all the sites we just spoke about. And then we'll go through each one and get your feedback, as Adam just mentioned. So with that, I'm hoping many, if not all of you, stick around. As what typically happens as we move into small groups, a few folks do drop off. So I'm going to have to recalibrate here a little bit.
And maybe, yeah, and I guess before people jump off, I do want to mention that we're going to be continuing this poll of the sites that we just had, combined with the feedback what you just provided. But we're going to continue. I think we're going to be at a pop-up event over at the town center with these boards and these sites and getting additional feedback out there in the community. So this is also going to be available on our website. So please tell others that you may know to participate in this poll, because the more feedback we get, the more respondents, the better.
Excellent. Great point, Adam. So I'm going to go ahead and open the small groups. I do see a couple of hands that are already being raised, and we'll get to that discussion as we move into small groups, and then hopefully you all stick around and we'll come back and do a quick report out before we send you on your way. So I'm going to open all the rooms now. Some of you are going to stay right here with us in the main room. Others will be asked to kind of transition to one of the small groups. So have fun. We'll see you again here soon. Perfect.
You just tell me what you need and I'll.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's just go ahead and do a quick report out from each group. And so just we can get a sense of the conversations that were had. And I'll just go straight down the list, Adam, and start with you, and maybe just in a minute or two, give a quick snapshot of the discussion you had, and then we'll talk through next steps.
Absolutely. I'll do my best. I think on the positive side, and maybe I shouldn't frame it that way, but we had comments sort of supporting some particular sites, the village and the theater property as being sort of really good sites, and even the one up at Pfeiffer and Nellen as well looked like a good site to pursue. Other sites that we may have missed included looking into a cluster of properties at Madera del Presidio and Paradise that were older commercial properties, maybe a Granada school site, and also the some local churches, and maybe they have excess land that could be developed or in conjunction with their functions. There was some concern about housing in proximity to the highway and sort of noise, potentially air quality, questions about how that might be mitigated and whether that was actually appropriate and could work. And then lastly, I would just say we discussed, it'd be great. We want to get people on transit. We don't have great public transit. But the idea was that, after some conversation, I think the idea was that we were trying to get folks are fairly close to the best available public transit, which is on Highway 101, and maybe access to Smart Train, and the northern properties that have better access to Smart Train and Larkspur Ferry. But overall, I think some support for the direction and the framework, planning framework that we presented.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. Martha, we'll go to you next.
Yep. similar to Adam, heard a lot of comments, or several comments, people in support of the framework and of keeping kind of residential out of existing neighborhoods. There was a lot of support in room 2 for the Macy's site. People generally felt it was a large site. It can accommodate a lot of housing. It has a good access close to the freeway and the roadway network. And also folks felt that it could really kind of positively change the village and add some more kind of vibrancy into the center. There was a comment about kind of expressing some concerns of potential fiscal impacts of losing commercial uses. There's also water came up as kind of a concern related to some of the housing in general. And one of the members kind of suggested that we kind of think into the future of how things could change. And maybe we don't need as many parking at some of the larger centers as we have. And someone suggested actually at the town center, the area kind of near the gas station as a potential housing site, and losing some parking, with looking into the future that maybe there'll be autonomous vehicles down the road. So I will stop there, but we had a great discussion. So thank you everyone for participating and providing comments.
Great, thank you, Martha. And Phil, we'll go to you next.
Great. Yes, thank you. We had a great discussion in our group. Question of ADUs came up. How many we produced in the past, how many we project would be produced over the 8-year period. Christine estimated, and the way it's done, probably about 100 ADUs in that 8-year period. So that's 1/7 of our requirement. And I also pointed out that the creation of ADUs is mainly done by individuals and single family homes, so a little bit different than these larger developments. Some definite interest in the Pfeiffer area, also interest in, and we heard from one of the property owners on Tamil Plaza regarding his property as a potential site. And there was also some concern of the Macy's site, especially if Macy's San Rafael at Northgate closes down. What would that be like for Marin to lose both their Macy's stores? So there's concerns about that. And also some questions and concerns that each one of these sites property goes through the CEQA process if they are developed, and we talked about that. So it was a good discussion, and thank you all for participating.
Excellent, thank you, Phil. And again, yes, thank you all again for sticking with us. We have gone a bit over, but we wanted to just bring up on the screen, as Adam mentioned before, a few different ways to continue to engage with the process and some upcoming events that I'll let Adam speak to, and then we'll send you on your way. Adam, if you want to bring up your shared screen, that would be great.
All right, let's see.
Excellent, thanks.
Yeah, so certainly there's multiple ways you can continue. You don't just have to participate. I certainly am thrilled that you all are here tonight and sticking with us at these workshops. I think this is a great engagement exercise, and we love hearing from you directly and in real time. But we also have other options. We have an email devoted to this, housingplan@tcnmail. Please, we have a great website that Dave and his team have created that really is devoted just to the housing element process. You can catch up, as I mentioned, on old workshops and get information that way, cortemaderahousing.org. Get others involved, please. Have them. What we intend to do with this poll is actually keep the poll alive, put it on our website, and then we're going to actually go out. Like I said, we'll be at, I may have said this to my group, we're going to be at Town Center. I think we're looking at the week before Christmas, maybe hopefully trying to steal a stall from the farmer's market there, and have people be able to take the poll that we just gave out to all of you at that location. It's going to live on for a while longer, but so that's something you can tell others to do as well. Sign up for our email notifications, call us. Again, we're also happy to come out to any organizations or smaller groups that you have that think should be hearing about this and getting involved. And then I just want to say, reiterate though, that we are entering into a sort of a critical period of time here where we are moving this process forward. The next step will come back in January based on the feedback we have this evening and that we have over the next few weeks. And we will be presenting essentially a scenario that we think may be able to achieve the requirements that we have to get to a compliant housing element. We're going to talk through some of the specifics of the RENA number that the town has and how we have to some of the requirements for sites from state law that we're going to have to comply with. And I think we've been considering that, but we need to put a finer point on those requirements and talk more specifically about, I think, some numbers. And so we intend to do that in January, and then we'll get feedback. And then we're at February at that workshop. We really need to actually have a proposal that we're going to take forward that will include likely some land use changes, some rezonings, and that's going to start the process of environmental analysis on those land use policy changes. So it is going to come pretty quick. I hope everyone has a great holiday. You don't have to think too much about this we'll do the thinking for you over the holidays on the housing element stuff, but join us again in January 12th. You'll have to get to my next our next workshop, January 12th, 2022. Again, it's the second Wednesday of the month, 6:30 p.m. and the same Zoom link. So please join us again next January, next month in 2022. And until then, I wish you all a great holiday and a happy new year, and we'll see you on the other side. Does that sound good?
Yep. Good night, all. Thanks. Yeah, and I just wanted to note I saw a couple extra comments come in. We'll make sure those get into the summary as well through the chat. So thank you all again for your great input. Have a great evening.